Imagine yourself going through an entire interviewing process. The first, the second phone interviews, then maybe 4, maybe 7 rounds of on-site interviews. You will get asked a ton of questions, maybe 50 questions in total. So what's the probability that you will always have the best answers to those questions? Well, that's close to none, to be fair with you. But even still, what would be some advice on how to optimize that probability that your answers will be the strongest, the answers that you give will be the strongest? And it turns out that if you introduce a little bit of delay whenever someone asks you a question, you intentionally take a bit more time to think about your answer, the probability significantly increases that you will always be using your best stories. And someone put it quite nicely: you should listen to learn, not listen to respond. So learn what's the question, why are they asking you this question, and then try to do your best with your best possible answer. And this way, you optimize your probability that your answer will be the best on a consistent basis. Second advice here: what if you don't have an answer to the question that you're being asked? And I'm talking about the behavioral part of the interview here. Well, not having an answer and saying, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer, that would be a big mistake, because behavioral interviewing is, the behavioral questions are designed in such a way that anyone has an answer for them. The challenge is how quickly can you come up with the best possible answer here. This is where the difference should be made in a behavioral interview. But still, what can you do if you still, you cannot come up with an answer here? Well, my recommendation would be to try to win time here, and I have a couple of methods to achieve this. First of all, what if the question is not clear? Maybe you could ask a couple of follow-up questions to further clarify it. Or what if you simply repeated the question out loud? Wouldn't you win a couple of seconds, 5, maybe 10 seconds, depending on the question? All right, if still you cannot think of a good story this time, what can you do about this? Well, it turns out that a very common approach here, and one that's not particularly liked by many interviewers, is you could start with a general statement. Like, for example, when you tell me about time when you had to prioritize between quality and cost. Right? You don't have a specific answer, then you start general. Whenever I would have to have a trade-off between quality and cost, I ensure that the quality, if it's not increasing, at least stay the same in whatever I do. The cost is something that can eventually get negotiated. Right, so there you go, I won around 7 to 10 seconds simply by making a general statement, and then whenever I got the specific story, I would say, and a specific example of this would be this. What you should be careful here is not to overreact with the general statement, because a well-known bad way to answer a behavioral question would be to give a general answer. So just use this as a strategy to win time until you get the best possible story you want to use for this question. Another trick in an interview is to try to mimic the interviewer's behavior. Try to read the room. Simply put, if they smile, you should smile as well. If they're serious, you should be more serious as well. Or if they speak fast, you could also speak faster. Or if they speak slow, you could also speak slower. And essentially, you want to mimic their behavior to become more likable in a way. Just ensure that if you've never done this before, you trial this with a friend or with someone at first, to see how it. The idea essentially to get comfortable with this. But reading the room is something that you would want to take seriously, of course, in more likely in an on-site interview, simply because we're all humans and we all have biases. So no matter how much a company tries to template and to score an interviewer's performance using analytical methods, we're biased as humans. So keep this in mind. Reading the room is important. Next, understand the constraints of an employer with interviewing anyone, and that those constraints, in particular for a behavioral interview, they must template it somehow. There must be some behaviors that they are looking for and they are more interested in than others. So in other words, if you know what you'll be ranked on, what you'll be scored on during an interview, you should prepare specifically to score points to make a better performance specifically on the behavioral that they are most interested in. The easiest example is to talk about Amazon's 14 leadership principles. Like, that's why you would want to prepare specifically for those principles to score high on them. And of course, to give great answers, that's by far the most important thing. But if you can exploit this rather templated process, I think you should take this seriously while preparing for a behavioral interview. And last but not least, say you're towards the end of the interview and you feel like there's something missing. There's one little extra step, or you would want to consider going the extra mile to really get the job. And one trick you could consider doing here, I'm not telling you what to do in the job interview by any means, but something that I found very interesting would be to simply tell them, I really want the job. Like, you don't have to say it like this, you don't have to look desperate or overreacting, but you must show them that you're really interested and you really want the job. So if at all, at any point in time, you feel like this could help you to better communicate the message, or in other words, they feel you think that they feel they're not convinced by your performance, or you look like disinterested in getting the job, you could eventually use such an approach.